District Representative, elected Minority Leader of Missouri House of Representatives, and soon to be Missouri's next Attorney General.
Yeah!
Well, thanks very much. That's the kind of introduction I like, short, sweet, to the point, and accurate. Well, it's so great to be here with so many good friends and supporters. And as I always do when I'm in meetings like this, I want to introduce a couple of people who really themselves need no introduction to this group, but it's important to me and everybody that I introduce them. And the first is my wife, Katie, who is expecting our first child. And the second is, it's always nice as you're expecting a child to have a pediatrician in the family. It gives you great comfort. My dad, Dr. Bob Harris, is here also. Let me get right to the point. Let me just say it unambiguously, clearly, and as straightforward as I can. I am running for Attorney General, and I intend to be and will be our state's next Attorney General to succeed Jay Nixon.
Yeah!
Let me tell you a little bit here today what I intend to do as Attorney General and the type of Attorney General that I will be and the type of office that we're going to run when I take office in January of 2009. If you want to know what kind of AG I'm going to be, look at my legislative record. I believe that as Democrats, we stand for fairness, we stand for justice, that we stand for the average Missourian. For those who sometimes don't have a voice in the process, can't afford a voice in the process, and for those who just every day are trying to work hard and make a better life for themselves and for their families. And that's who we represent and stand for as Democrats, and that's what I intend to do as Attorney General. Let's talk about some specifics. One of the things that's important if you're Attorney General is to make sure that that our families and our communities are safe. And that means a couple of different things. That means making sure that there is appropriate punishment for those who would dare to do wrong, those who would dare to break the laws. And it also means, I think, an important role of the AG's office is to focus on prevention as well. And in the legislature, I'm proud of my record of making sure that families and communities across Missouri are safe. And I will tell you that as Attorney General, whether you are Democrat or Republican, you can't be squeamish. You can't be ambiguous about making sure that there is appropriate punishment for the bad actors out there. That's been my record in the legislature. I'm proud to have passed legislation that, for example, creates the law of child endangerment for persons who are cooking methamphetamine in a home where a child is living. It means making sure that the punishment fits the crime. And as AG, I'm not going to be squeamish or ambiguous about making sure that policies are in place and laws are in place to make sure that bad actors are punished. But that's only part of the equation. As Attorney General, I intend to immediately form a task force, a bipartisan, nonpartisan task force to study domestic violence in the state of Missouri, to look at our laws on the books and make sure that our laws are appropriate and they cover the appropriate spectrum. But also it's important, and this is something I believe this task force and this group should be tasked with. We have to focus on prevention when it comes to domestic violence. It's where the focus has moved in the area of child abuse. I served on Prevent Child Abuse Missouri, and our focus is increasingly you can look at what those factors are that might be predictive of someone who would engage in that type of behavior. I think we should do the same thing with domestic violence. Let's certainly punish it, but let's, for example, send a message to young men that you're not a real man if you abuse your girlfriend, to send a message that there are steps we can take to prevent domestic violence from occurring. Other attorneys general across the country have done this, and I think it's something that we should do in the state of Missouri. Another important thing for the Attorney General, and I know we've all kind of gotten used to this, having an Attorney General in there who will stand up for consumers, is to make sure that we have an Attorney General who will stand up for consumers and be a strong consumer advocate. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'll give you some things that I intend to do as Attorney General. First thing is let's change the laws on predatory lending. Right now in the state of Missouri, a person can... Right now, a person is, as we all know, an entity can charge as much as 396% interest. 396% interest on a payday or a title loan. Because they have powerful friends in the Missouri General Assembly, who I hope are going to watch this on CATV and get the message, we haven't been able to change that law. But I will tell you, as Attorney General, you can set the policy agenda, you can set an agenda that will be pro-consumer, and as Attorney General, I will ask the legislature, and I know I will have the support of Governor Jay Nixon, to change the laws on predatory lending and stop these companies from engaging in usurious behavior. It's just not fair to hardworking Missourians. And I think also, when it comes to consumer protection, the Attorney General has to be innovative and creative. Innovative and creative. And it's not acceptable to me as a consumer, as a taxpayer, to hear an Attorney General say, and ours hasn't said this, but it's not acceptable to say, well, you know, that's out of my hands. That law's not on the books yet. I mean, let me give you an example. Gas prices. We all pay too much. Gas prices are too high. We all pay too much for the price of a gallon of gas. If there is predatory, anti-competitive behavior that's engaged in by folks who are selling gasoline, then I don't think it's acceptable for an Attorney General to say, well, the laws aren't yet on the books. I can't do anything about that. As Attorney General, if that kind of stuff is going on, if gas prices are something that needs to be addressed, if anti-competitive behavior among these folks is taking place, then let's change the laws and give me the power to crack down on those folks. Because again, that's what the average Missourian deserves and expects. When it comes to Medicaid fraud, it's no question we need tougher laws on the books to crack down on Medicaid fraud. There are laws on the books that give us some authority as the AG to do that, but we've got to do more. Elliot Spitzer in New York as Attorney General got laws passed to crack down on that sort of fraud, and we need to be able to do that as well in Missouri. I need that ability to make sure that fraud doesn't occur in the Medicaid system. Another area when we talk about standing up for consumers, and I know I'm going through a laundry list here, but I think it's important that we talk about specifics. It's important that folks know what we'll do when we're in office as AG. Increasingly, as a matter of fact, we just visited a minute ago before I came up here, identity theft is a real problem. Everybody, or not everybody, but it should be a concern for everybody, and I gotta tell you, every time I go speak someplace, someone comes up to me, and it happened in Warren County this week. I visited with some folks recently at our other Democratic event in Boone County. People are either victims of identity theft or they know someone who has been a victim. This is something, when we look at cyberspace and the amount of business that all of us do over the internet, we think we're secure and private, and our information is protected by being in our homes using our computers. And the fact of the matter is, there are folks out there who know how to hack into computers. They did it at the University of Missouri. We've all read about other examples, and to me, it's no different than someone picking your pocket. They're just doing it a different way. So as Attorney General, we will focus on identity theft, both prevention and protection, making sure that our personal privacy is protected without engaging in some of the big brother tactics that we've seen from the federal government, because we have to strike that balance. We've got to protect people's personal information, but I don't want Uncle Sam or Missouri government being a part of my home computer as a consequence. So what I intend to do, as they have done in some other states, attorneys general across the country, a few of them, have a special cyber crimes internet unit. I intend to have that in the AG's office. And again, the focus is not just on making sure the laws are there to appropriately punish those who steal that information, but to make sure we educate Missourians about the steps we can all take to make sure that our personal information is protected when we're doing business over the internet, and making sure that we are protecting folks' identities. Utility prices, the cost of utilities is always an issue. You know, We have folks who struggle every day. Our heating bills go up, our air conditioning bills go up in the summer. Something else I intend to do as Attorney General. I think the Office of Public Counsel, as many of you know, John Kaufman was the public counsel before the Blunt administration kicked him out. The Office of Public Counsel, I believe, should be in the Attorney General's office. Right now, it's in the Department of Economic Development. I believe the Attorney General should have the authority to appoint the public counsel and stand up for ratepayers. Stand up for ratepayers in utility rate proceedings. Why is that important? I'm not here suggesting that utilities are manipulating prices, but consumers need a voice at the table, and the public counsel is the way to do that. The public counsel belongs in the AG's office. The Attorney General should have the authority to appoint a strong consumer advocate to stand up for consumers in rate-making proceedings. Another area where the Attorney General can play a great role, a tremendous role, and I intend to do this as Attorney General, is to protect our quality of life, and that means protecting our natural resources. The message that I have to polluters is don't come to Missouri, because you're not welcome when I'm Attorney General. We demonstrated that in the legislature. You know, I've demonstrated that in the legislature. Right now, it's not an environmentally friendly legislature, but we have to take steps to protect our valuable natural resources. You know, our streams, our land. Missouri's a great place. We have wonderful natural resources in this state, but if we don't protect them with sensible, responsible protections and appropriate punishments for people who violate our rules, then we're going to lose our quality of life. You know, a particular issue that I've been involved in the legislature has dealt with these confined animal feeding operations. I'm not suggesting we ban them outright, but I think if they are not playing by the rules, or if the rules aren't strong enough, then we need to do something about it, because it holds tremendous threat, tremendous possibility of polluting our streams and our air quality and our quality of life. I'm not saying ban them outright, but let's make sure that municipalities and the counties have the ability to regulate those, and make sure that if they are polluting our environment, they're punished. Now, let's talk a little bit nuts and bolts about where our campaign is. And then I always want to make sure, this is a great group to get questions from. I probably should have prepared for about 6 hours before I came in here to hear questions, but I want to know what's on people's minds. Before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about this election and why it's important for the Democratic Party, and also where we stand in our campaign. This is going to take, and I know everybody here hates politicians talking about money, but this is going to take a lot of money to do this thing right and to be successful. I had a radio interviewer the other day say to me, well, you know, can't you do something about the role of money in politics, and why don't you guys do something about that? And I said, as soon as you stop charging me for radio advertising, I'd be glad to stop raising money. But until you do that, we're going to raise money every single day as much as we can, because that's how we're going to get our message out. And we know as a party that traditionally in nearly every election, with or without campaign contribution limits, we're at a disadvantage. We just don't want to be at a competitive disadvantage. So where do we stand? Well, fortunately, in this last fundraising quarter, in our campaign, we raised more money than any other candidate for Attorney General, and that includes the Republican candidates. And that's due to the help of a lot of people in this room. That is due to the help of a lot of people in this room and a lot of people across this community, and of course across our state. Most of our contributions were at or below the new contribution limits. So the good news is the refunds, if we're required to give refunds, aren't going to be that substantial in our campaign. So things are going well. Now, why is it important? Why is it important that we keep this office? Well, it ought to be self-evident, and I think it probably is, but it's worth remembering. For the last 16 years, we've had an Attorney General who has done a very good job. And we've been accustomed to an Attorney General who will stand up for consumers, who will do the right thing, who will protect the environment, and who has our best interests at heart. But this is now an open seat. we can't give this seat up as a party. We cannot give this seat up as a party. We must have a Democrat in office, in this office, who will do the things, who will uphold our values, will be a voice for consumers. We cannot give this office up, and they want this office. Now, I was raised not to brag, and I hope this isn't interpreted as such, but I will tell you that I'm the guy who's going to win this race. I'm the person who's going to win this race, and here's why. I am a proven vote getter. In the last election, I received more votes than any other Democrat running for the Missouri House of Representatives, and that includes people who ran unopposed. And again, that's due to the help and hard work of everybody in this room. For the last two legislative sessions, I have been unanimously elected by my colleagues to be the Democratic leader. I don't say that to brag. I do say that, though, to emphasize this fact. To win in a statewide race in the state of Missouri, you have to not just have the support of the members of your own party, but you need the support of independent voters and even some Republican voters. This is a competitive state, and we need to elect candidates who are proven vote getters. I've been selected to be the leader by my colleagues in the House who are across the spectrum of the Democratic Party: white, black, young, old, rural, urban, pro-life, pro-choice. They put their faith in me as their leader, and they believed that I could do the job. And it is that same faith and that same vote-getting ability that I intend to use with the help of everybody in this room to successfully win this office and to take office as our next Attorney General in January 2009. So I thank you all for all your help. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is going to be a long, hard race, but I appreciate your help, and we are going to get there. Thank you very much for having me.
On television and on here. So our speaker today is Nancy Rice. She's been a community organizer and currently is hired by Flashman Hillard, a PR firm, for an informational campaign about the legislation. The client for Health South, which currently owns lots of health facilities, including Rusk Rehabilitation Center. Nancy has also been active in Democratic politics and used to work for Senator Ken Jacobs. So if we could welcome her today.
Put it on here.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me? No? How about now? All right. First of all, Greg Christian is with me, and he worked for Ken Jacobs. As you can tell by my hair, I have been active in Democratic politics longer than Greg, but I didn't work for Ken Jacobs. Thanks for having me here today. Greg is passing out a two-sided sheet of paper about this legislation. It is sponsored by many members of the Missouri delegation because it's of great concern to senior citizens. And basically, there is a pretty arcane rule that Medicare adopted 2 years ago that sets criteria that's very onerous for seniors who are on Medicare to get treatment at an inpatient rehabilitation hospital like Rusk, or other hospitals have inpatient rehabilitation beds. I will go through the details if somebody wants it, but it's a lot of arcane minutia, and it has been stopping people from getting into the hospital. The original goal of the rule was to encourage more people to get their rehabilitation on an outpatient basis instead of inpatient because it's less costly. And while that's a laudable goal, there have been severe unintended consequences. For example, in the first 24 months, and the rule's been in effect for 24 months, in the first 24 months, they anticipated that 20,000 people would shift from inpatient to outpatient. In fact, 88,000 people have been turned away from hospitals Medicare patients because of this rule and its unintended consequences. What the rule does is it insists that in order for a Medicare patient to be able to be treated at a hospital like Rusk, they have to have other medical conditions. And if a certain percentage of a hospital's patients don't meet that criteria, the hospital loses its Medicare reimbursement rate. And it's a very onerous, I believe that the Medicare reimbursement rate for inpatient rehab is 4 times that of a normal acute care. So it's a very onerous punishment. And Rusk is doing okay. It hasn't had a negative effect on Rusk Hospital, but it has caused hospitals to start shutting down around the country. Rusk, because of their relationship with University of Missouri and the type of patients they get, they're okay. But other hospitals are having serious problems. The law had set that criteria that the first year, 55% of the patients had to meet that criteria, then the next year, 65%, and now it's at 75%. The legislation that I'm speaking to you about today freezes it at 75%. They are not talking about rolling it back to making it entirely at doctor's discretion. The types of patients that come in would still have to be managed by the hospital, but next year it's supposed to go to 85%, and there's no question that hospitals will shut down all over the country when it hits at 85%. And the effect of that is going to be that people who need that care can't get it. I mean, what they've done is they've taken a very convoluted way of rationing this type of care. And it's going to be, as people are turning 60 and the first baby boomers will be on Medicare in 5 years, it's going to overwhelm the system, and this type of rehab care won't be available to people. And it is very important care if you need it. You know, I mean, a lot of people, stroke patients and people who get a hip replaced or a knee replaced, do very well with outpatient. But there are some people who, for medical reasons, should be in a hospital. And the fact that they're not going to be able to do that is very serious. So that's kind of a description of the legislation. It's at Congress, and it's doing very well in terms of picking up support. Both Senator Bond and Claire are supporting as sponsors. The congressman from this area, Hulshoff, is a sponsor, as is Aiken out of St. Louis, Carnahan. I haven't confirmed Carnahan, but I heard from the people at SSM that he was going on the bill last week, they told me. Clay is on the bill, Cleaver and Graves from Kansas City, and Joanne Emerson. So everybody but Skelton and Blunt are on the bill from Missouri right now. And the bill might start moving. They'll never move this on its own. It's too arcane. But any bill that has anything to do with Medicare, they'll probably try to put it on. And I think the one they're looking at right now is the S-CHIPS bill, the Children's Health Bill. So this might actually make some movement in the next few weeks. What I wanted to do today was inform you about this, ask for you to contact Senator Bond, Senator McCaskill, and Congressman Hulshoff. I brought fact sheets and paper and pens if you wanted to jot off a little note to them today that I could take with me and answer any questions that you might have. So, are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, how many of the rehab patients are being transferred to long-term care, nursing home type facilities?
The question was how many patients are being transferred to long-term care nursing home facilities. The answer is probably a lot of them. And that number, remember, this has only been in effect for 24 months, so there's not a lot of statistical data about outcomes and things like that yet. But the only people who have opposed this legislation formally is the long-term care facility group, is the nursing home.
Yeah, for what reason?
I think it's a competition over the dollars. I mean, their stated purpose is we can give this care, and we don't need. I mean, that's their reason, is that we can provide good care. And of course, everybody knows they have a role in the healthcare continuum. So the answer is I don't know, but it's significant enough that they've opposed the legislation. Yes, ma'am, and then you.
Have there been any reports to show how much money has been saved by doing this?
The question was if there were any reports that showed how much money has been saved by having this rule in place. And again, I don't think so. They have a fiscal note on it. It's not called a fiscal note in Congress, it's called something else, but it's a fiscal note. They look at the cost of this, and they didn't cover that part. They just looked at the additional cost. The additional cost is about $1 billion a year. Or no, it's $3 billion over 5 years, excuse me. So that must be about what they think they're saving. Yes, ma'am.
On the nursing homes, I have experience with this. Medicare will pay for about 90 days if you come from the hospital, you need therapy, because my mother is in a skilled nursing home that has physical, occupational, and speech therapy. And so they will give this therapy for that 90 days, and Medicare reimburses it. And that's where, out of the hospital, that's where she and various friends have gone to get that care. So
Yes.
that's where
That's where I think people are ending up. If their doctor says they should be in an inpatient facility and they can't, that's where they're ending up. And also, I think, I'm not a medical professional, but I've listened to a number of them talk on this issue. And I think that there is honestly plenty of people where the nursing home setting is fine, that they're not in need.
Well, it's, in this particular case, Medicare will only pay for getting therapy, like physical therapy.
Yeah.
They're not going to just pay for the nursing home.
Right, I understand.
They're going therapy.
But I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to stand here and say that that's always inappropriate, because I think sometimes it's appropriate.
Well,
But,
it's 24 hours a day.
Right.
Yeah, it's cheaper than hospital.
that's right, but depending on the physical condition of the patient. And I think that's the point, is that the physical condition, this is an arbitrary set of numbers that isn't related to the physical condition of people. So people who need hospitalization, who need that kind of monitoring, maybe they're in danger of throwing a blood clot, or something like that would be a very severe outcome. They're not getting into hospitals because of these arbitrary numbers.
Have they been, the people that need the in-home service, have they been able to get that too? Have they been coming back on that?
The question is about in-home services and whether the people are able to get that too. I don't think that has been affected one way or another. That stands alone. This is strictly about people going in the hospital. And again, I think the part that many consumer advocates find so objectionable is that it's set on quotas of the number of people who can come through the door in certain physical condition instead of an evaluation of the physical condition of the patient.